Hello, welcome to yet another installment of Cookie Pocket. This podcast is still about film, even though we haven't used that subtitle in a long time. I don't know why I'm pulling it back out now.
Wow.
But hey.
Nostalgic
Indeed. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Zach and Mitchell, as always, but I see there's a fourth person in this call for some reason. So would you care to introduce yourself, mystery person?
Hi, I'm Amelia. I'm Christian's friend from high school, and I also watch movies.
Excellent. So you are just as qualified as we are to do this.
Yes, although I do have a theater degree. I don't know
shoot.
how much
She's
of a
more
qualification
qualified.
that is.
Oh, no. I'm going to be unseated by the end of this episode.
Oh, dear.
Thank you for joining us, Amelia. And this is your second time with us, is that right?
Yes, my second time.
You joined us for Good Will Hunting. I can't remember if that was 1 or 2 seasons ago, but that was fun.
I think it was last season.
Yeah, it was last season.
Cool.
However long ago that was. My gosh.
And today we are doing a sort of, I would call it a post-hype assessment of sorts. Maybe not post-hype because it's still out there in theaters and it's still killing it. But we're talking about Barbie, Greta Gerwig's Barbie. Directed by Greta Gerwig and written by her and Noah Baumbach, a frequent collaborator of hers and her husband. And, of course, starring Margot Robbie as Barbie and Ryan Gosling as Ken, with a whole host of other Barbies and Kens, including, but not limited to, Issa Rae, Alexandra Shipp, Emma Mackey, and on the Ken side, Simu Liu, Kingsley Ben-Adir, and a couple human characters as well. Most importantly, probably America Ferrera as Gloria. And I should also mention Michael Cera as Alan. Kate McKinnon is Weird Barbie, and Michael Cera is Alan, which I already said, and Will Ferrell is Mattel CEO. So there we go. It's another meta film where Will Ferrell is the business guy, and I'm sure we'll get into that at greater length. But before we get too specific here, okay, maybe we won't. General thoughts, ratings out of 5. What did you think of Barbie, the cinema event of the year, as it would seem?
Well,
or maybe it's not the cinema event of the year.
I think unless there's some serious shakeups in Oscar season, maybe Barbie isn't the cinema event of the year. Maybe Barbenheimer is the cinema event of the year. Because even though Barbie was bigger than Oppenheimer, I think those two together made for rather a unique cinema event where people were both going to see them at the same time or back to back. I knew I was going to at least appreciate this film, but I think I liked it and found it a lot funnier than I expected. The first trailer had me really invested and I was really looking forward to it, and then the second trailer, I think it was the second trailer where they had the flat feet gag in the trailer. That one had me a little alarmed, because the flat feet gag is kind of the epitome of everything I hate about American comedy, where everybody just screams and that's meant to be funny. And then I saw, oh no, Will Ferrell is in this movie. And he's the king of everybody screams and it's meant to be funny. And I thought, oh no, could this movie be bad? But it wasn't. So I was quite pleased by that. I didn't like the flat feet gag still, but that was kind of the only joke of that kind in the film, and I surprisingly found Will Ferrell really funny, because I don't usually find him funny at all, and he got a lot of laughs from me. I don't think there was a single eye roll from a Will Ferrell gag for me in the film. I also really appreciate kind of the angle that the film took with kind of the dynamics between the Barbies and the Kens, and how that reflects on feminism in the real world, and alternatively how that kind of reflects sort of incel culture in the real world as well. It took a lot of things that I was worried that the film was going to tackle in a really blunt, unintelligent way, and it dealt with them in exactly the opposite way, where it managed to tackle everything I hoped it wouldn't in a really smart, funny way that I ended up thinking, oh, I'm actually glad they talked about that, even though I was kind of dreading it. So yeah, I would say I was pretty pleased by it. 4 out of 5. I do think that towards the end it gets a a wee bit pontificating and maybe a little heavy on the not montages, on the monologues. But that's a pretty minor quibble for a film that I was mostly pleased with all around.
Right on.
Great.
Go ahead, Amelia.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I've seen Barbie twice now. And same as Zach, the first trailer I was like really excited, and then the second trailer I was also still really excited, so I differ from you there. But I think I built it up a lot in my head. So I was a little disappointed by it the first time I saw it. So I gave it 4 stars the first time. And then I saw a lot of the reactions online. So many reactions on TikTok, to be honest. And then I went back and I saw it again, and I gave it 4.5 stars that time. Where it is, I think it's mostly, initially, I felt like it was saying a lot of things that were like painfully obvious to me. So, and I wanted it to say something like new and exciting, I guess. But I think that there are a lot of people out there who saw it and it wasn't saying things that were painfully obvious to them. So seeing it as that, and then just like as a fun movie that like I do like genuinely enjoy, and I love everybody in it, and like a lot of the jokes are funny. So, and I just wanted to give it 4.5 stars. So I did.
That's as good a reason
Nice.
to give a star rating, I think.
I was gonna say it's like Christian's #1 like motivation, because I feel like it. Well, I am a man, and I have my beer brewski today.
Oh, jeez.
What kind of brewski
And-
beer are you drinking, Mitchell?
It's Paulaner Münchenlager.
All right, we're not sponsored, by the way. But
Yeah. Oh, damn. Copyright strike. Okay. So I like this a lot better than I thought I would. I will second what Zach said about the addressing the issues thing. That was probably what I was most worried about. And I think I was very much expecting something a lot more like straightforward and blunt and maybe even radical. And I think a lot of the issues that were tackled, because it really did seem to cover a lot of different grounds. And I think for the ones that it did, it was very modest, and it wasn't modest in a way that like proposed inaction or proposed like, well, we just have to accept the way things are. It's kind of like, in a lot of the way the messaging resonated with me, in the sense that you're responsible for yourself, and that you as an individual can be all these different careers and everything, and on top of being a woman already, and then having like the stay-at-home mom part of it, and then just having all these sorts of responsibilities, and that it's up to you to decide how you want to tackle those responsibilities in a world that's constantly fighting against you. And I think I'm trying to summarize the last 3 monologues, because the last 3 monologues are what bothered me the most because of their execution. It bothered me a lot more than I think it bothered Zach. And I think, I guess part of the reason was I was kind of expecting a lot of different loose ends to be tied off in a way when it came to all of the different issues that were being addressed. And it was difficult for me to decide, I guess, in my own head, whether or not the issue was meant to be resolved later, or it was kind of something to be like a throwaway. And I guess an example of that would be really the main conflict and like the psychological conflict, I guess, with Barbie, stereotype Barbie, Margot Robbie. And I think like her central conflict, I wasn't sure if they were gonna like push that off for the sake of other subplots that would eventually result in something else, or if it was going to be like these subplots are more played off as like SNL skits almost, where it's like we have to include these types of things, like we have to have a dance number with Ken, we have to have his own thing, we have to have a car chase with the Chevy advertising.
Oh, yeah, that was bad.
And I just that was very on the nose for some reason. And I guess my point is that I was getting lost in a lot of these different subplots, and I was kind of wondering what message are they going to end up carrying, because they're addressing a lot of different aspects of feminism. They're addressing a lot of different, struggles that they're having, and that Barbies are having different struggles. And that's not even mentioning the Kens having their own issues. And then that ends up getting blown up into its own thing. So then the Kens all have existential crises. And then I just felt like there was a lot, not only was there a lot going on, it was just difficult for me to focus on what was going to eventually be the overall message. So the decision to tie it off into 3 monologues felt very easy for me, and I didn't have a problem with the monologues themselves. It was just kind of the placement within the pacing and everything, and I think that really hurt the momentum for me. And not to mention kind of like the Fairly Odd Parents or the Sugar Rush thing that Christian mentioned in his review with Lego Movie or Scott Pilgrim, kind of the same thing. My criticism remains there. I think a lot of the over emotional, we have to be sad, so everything going on has to be sad. There's no real nuance here. It's just everybody's sad, or the one person talking is happy, so everybody's happy. And I wasn't totally into that emotional back and forth. But obviously going to talk about the great things. I think the production is completely A1. I don't think there's any argument against that at all. There's so many different things I picked up on. That's probably one of the main reasons why I'd want to rewatch it, just because there's so much going on, especially in the actual Barbie land. And that was probably my biggest thing. And I think the casting's good. One interesting thing was that I was an avid watcher of Sex Education, and seeing 3 of those actors in here kind of pointed to which are all 3 great actors, by the way. And I really enjoy them. But I think it kind of shows that the target audience wasn't necessarily kids, and I guess we'll kind of get into the target audience thing. But I appreciated that it didn't feel like it was a movie specifically for people who loved it or people who hated Barbie, or it was an adult movie with child themes, or it was a childish movie with adult themes. There's a lot of mixture things in here, I guess teenager, adolescent is what would be the main audience. But it definitely appealed to a lot of different groups. The fourth wall breaks were kind of funny. I didn't laugh pretty much at all, which is probably very disappointing. I have different style of humor, and there's nothing. I was rolling my eyes very almost never. So I was just okay, I understand this is a joke, but this is not for me type thing. So, but yeah, it was a very enjoyable experience. I definitely liked it a lot more than I would, and I would definitely want to see it again at some point to see all of the things that I missed, and maybe it would come across to me with a lot more palatable, because I know what to expect, and the messaging will come across a lot more, I guess, the way it was intended, with the nuanced satire and everything.
Right on. Okay, I'm glad to hear that, Mitchell. I was a little worried, just because I've consumed a lot of Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach's works, and we talked about Baumbach's Marriage Story a while ago on the podcast, and I know that was probably the polar opposite of the type of thing that you would intentionally consume. So
I saw this yesterday. I saw Oppenheimer 2 days after it came out. So
yeah, well, I appreciate those comments though. Gosh, where to start here? Well, I'm a pretty big Gerwig fan myself. I've toyed with the idea of bringing one of her films onto the podcast for a while now. I think with Barbie, I've seen, if not all of her directorial work, then most of it. I've seen Lady Bird and Little Women, and I've kind of had mixed experiences with both of those, to be completely honest. And I saw one of her co-directed really early mumblecore films, and I'm not a fan of the mumblecore stuff at all. We're getting into very indie, largely improvised films that are meant to mimic real life, and to me that's taken a step too far. But I really love much of her work as an actor, especially her collaborations with Baumbach, like Frances Ha or Mistress America. Greenberg she's in as well. So very well versed with Gerwig before seeing this, and that was probably my biggest incentive to see it. I intended to see it before the Barbenheimer craze took over, but even then that added another level of fun to it. I really liked Barbie. I gave it a 4.5 for the same reason that Amelia did, because I
'Cause you
wanted
to.
and in retrospect, I think there are things that I might have done differently myself, or excesses, but by and large, I think it's a largely original blockbuster with car commercial chase scene aside, generally does a very commendable job of rising above its station in terms of what it aims to do, and the jokes it makes. And obviously, Mattel signed off on everything that's in here, and so did Warner Brothers. Distributed this. Yeah. But I still think what they say is disarmingly funny at times, and I think we're maybe in this media environment where we've heard Margot Robbie or Gerwig say, "I can't believe they let us make this movie," like 20 different times, and maybe we've internalized that, and that's just shot the expectations through the roof. But I was laughing so much in the first hour, especially in Barbie Land, especially with the Ryan Gosling's desperation simp Ken moments were very fun for me, and I'm a big fan of the Baumbach Gerwig writing approach to things. So I think that they really stuck the landing there. I think probably my biggest criticism then would be that I found the first 40-ish minutes to be my favorite part of the film, which is probably not a popular answer among those that really loved the thematic stuff here with the America Ferrera's monologue, or the final resolution of the film. But I would still commend that, and I think the way it approaches the idea of feminism and this dichotomy of men and women and Barbie and Ken, I think it does a good job of. Barbie and Ken are obvious stands-in for women and men, but at the same time, I think it smartly and appropriately doesn't treat them as the same thing. And I think sort of the both the setup of Ken's and the conclusion for Barbie and Ken is a little bit differently. They find some wiggle room there that I think makes a lot of sense. So we'll dig into all that a bit more. But first thing I wanted to ask you guys is about Gerwig's influences. I know we're all on Letterboxd. There's this long Letterboxd interview where she recounts like 30 plus films that were her influence in making this. And I do think sometimes Barbie can almost feel like a checklist of did we get this movie in here. Obviously in the teaser there's that 2001 call out with the girls and their dolls. Gerwig's mentioned The Wizard of Oz from a production standpoint, and 30s and 40s and 50s soundstage musicals. She's talked about a lot of Jacques Demy, who I love. The Umbrellas of Cherbourg was a big influence on the production design. A lot of Gene Kelly films, like An American in Paris, Singing in the Rain. More musicals. She mentions The Red Shoes, another one for production design. She mentions His Girl Friday as motivating the quickness of the dialogue, and The Philadelphia Story for a similar respect. She mentions Wings of Desire because of this whole like conversing between worlds thing. The Truman Show for the meta aspects. Saturday Night Fever for the dance sequences, and the list goes on. I'm really only scratching the surface here. But I wanted to ask you guys, do you think these influences were incorporated well? If you know any of the films I've mentioned or any other she was inspired by, did that affect the way Barbie handled similar techniques or scenes? Or just what did you make of the influences? Did it add to the film? Did it feel like too much?
I think the ideal way to work with influences for a film that you want everybody to enjoy. I think the ideal way for influences to come across in a finished film is for, when you hear about it, for a viewer to go, "Oh, that's nifty, I can see that." But for that to not be blindingly and distractingly apparent when watching the film itself. And I would say that I think Barbie accomplishes that pretty much across the board. Because I've seen, I'm not sure if that interview was originally published as written or as a video. I saw the video version. Going through the video after having seen the film, I thought, oh, I can see that. Oh, I can see that. Oh, I can see that. And these references are really important when you're behind the scenes and making a film, because you need to you need a mood board and you need an idea of like what you want your crew to achieve, and they're really important there. But I do think that once you're actually done, your visuals should kind of stand on their own as their own thing. And at no point in Barbie did I think, well, they're just cribbing from Saturday Night Fever here. Well, this is just a shot from Singin' in the Rain. I think it's fun to look back at them in post or after having watched the film and go, that's just a shot from Singin' in the Rain. But in the moment, didn't distract me, didn't stand out, didn't yell at me at all. And I think that's a real achievement, because I think it means that she incorporated all of her influences but made something of her own at the same time, which I think is exactly what you should be trying to do. So I forget what the exact wording of the question was, but yes, I think they did a good job.
Great. I forget the wording as well.
Yeah, I would just agree with everything Zach said. Like, I was going to say, like, when I was watching it, not that I basically, of those movies, I've seen, like, The Wizard of Oz and Singin' in the Rain. Okay. So, I know, like, the old soundstage musicals, that's, like, my point of reference for the references. And, like, thinking back on it, I can obviously see, like, how that affected, like, the production, specifically of Barbie Land, obviously. But I was never, like, I'm literally just watching Singin' in the Rain right now. Like, looking back, I'd be like, oh, duh. Like, there it is. But, yeah, it wasn't, like, distracting or, like, I'm not watching Barbie. I'm watching this other movie. So, nice. Good job.
Yay.
Thumbs up.
Yeah, I definitely think there's also an advantage of having all of those films being very old, because most people watching, a large majority of people watching, will probably not notice very much. I mean, even I'll add on to what both of you said about, like, Wizard of Oz is, I mean, that was very obvious to me, but it was like, it wasn't like a plot point. It wasn't like a major part of Wizard of Oz that doesn't get replicated a million times later. It's kind of like there were Easter eggs / small formulas used that are, like, kind of like golden, where you can pretty much use them. You can use them creatively very easily, I guess. And I'm not saying there's a low bar in trying to incorporate all these things, but I am saying, like, it definitely Greta Gerwig chose the right thing to use. Like, using Barbie for all these things is a great, fantastic idea. Like, the outfit inspirations and stuff, all that worked perfectly, like, seamlessly, stuff that I didn't know about until I researched it with my mom beforehand and after. And there's stuff my mom noticed because she was a huge fan of a lot of stuff that was referenced, but she was not bothered by anything. It's nice to see that it's not just nostalgia bait, I guess, because just by virtue of the fact that a lot of the iconic things being referenced are still not, like, blockbuster things being referenced. It's like there's just a lot of different moving pieces there, and it adds more complexity to what would otherwise just be like an Easter egg.
And I do think you pointing out the age of The Wizard of Oz, Mitchell, actually kind of made me realize a lot of the comps that she has on that list are so old that, to a certain extent, they're almost kind of part of our mythology now. I think The Wizard of Oz, in a weird way, has become, and I know Wizard of Oz is based on a book, but kind of those filmic visuals of The Wizard of Oz have become less symbolic of the movie itself and more symbolic of some kind of, like, visual or style or almost myth ingrained in kind of, like, American cinema culture. And so criticizing the film for using influences that old and that historic, I don't know, it would almost be like, I don't know, criticizing a film for loosely homaging Alice in Wonderland or the Three Little Pigs or something like that. Like, nobody is going to look at a movie and go, well, you just ripped off Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Like, it's become, that material is so old that it's, like, unrip-offable at this point. It's so, like, mythical and widely known that everybody kind of everybody sort of references that in some way in a lot of projects, whether they realize it or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's well said. And for the most part, I agree. I don't think, like the dance party, I don't think I was like, oh, Saturday Night Fever, especially because most of these are incorporated so well into the plot. Like, none of the excesses of Barbie Land bothered me because they came from somewhere else, or even because they were especially stylized or Hollywoodified, because that's the whole point of that space. I do think narratively, the one point at which it felt like an influence was included just because it was something Gerwig enjoyed, or was the sort of like dream ballet with the Kens. I think that was like maybe like a half step too far for me.
And I'm Just Ken?
I'm Just Ken was fine.
I'm Just Ken was the best part of the movie for me. I'm gonna throw all my chips on I'm Just Ken. In my Letterboxd review, I called I'm Just Ken awe-inspiring, and I was not joking.
Please go on, please.
That's my
Zach
point.
Essay.
The dream ballet, the battle on Malibu Beach, all of these are, as my best friend Marty would say, they're cinema.
Oh my god!
I don't know.
I will say the 2001 thing.
Oh yes.
Maybe there's a tiny bit of bias there, okay? But maybe we could have gone without that, okay? Maybe. Maybe.
I will say maybe I wouldn't have missed that. I'd kind of forgotten about that. Mm-hmm. I'd also forgotten that was the very first trailer. That was like the original teaser trailer. And I will admit, when that first trailer came out, I was pretty excited about the movie, and then that first teaser trailer with the 2001 homage came out. And I kind of got harangued for saying it, but I was like, I don't know, that seems kind of obvious. And at first glance, it might seem like a Barbie homage using 2001. How is that obvious? But like, everybody uses 2001 and the 2001 music for like a momentous, great like thing. It's a joke as old as 2001. I do think it's kind of tired at this point. So I had forgotten about that. I will kind of agree with you there, Mitchell. I don't think it dragged the film down, but it was maybe one of the few references where I was like, all right, this is from the playbook. I've seen it in the trailer.
Yeah.
2001 didn't bother me, but I am fond of the idea of films making their trailer having as little carryover as possible from the trailer to the film, just because if the trailer's purpose is to give you a taste of what the film will be, and you guys know I'm like spoiler averse to the extreme, to a ridiculous extent. So I'm just I very much like to not know what I'm going to see, and I think that affects viewership a lot. And that was true for me for a lot of Barbie. I think the TV spots and sort of the clips on Instagram or TikTok or wherever tended to include a lot of the bigger laugh lines, but I hadn't really been keyed into this. I don't know if I even saw the second trailer from start to finish, let alone those that followed. So laugh lines like when the Kens are going to beach each other off, that was very unexpected and funny to me. Whereas if I had seen that in the trailer, I would probably just be rolling my eyes in the seat or kind of waiting for the next 20 seconds to pass. Yeah.
Yeah. I did watch all the trailers and everything. So, and I would say definitely, yeah, the comedic moments, there were a lot of them where in the movie it was like, okay, the flat foot part, it's just, I've seen this so many times, like, can we get going now? But I will say, I think that a theme in like trailers these days is that it kind of, people say it gives away the whole movie. And I don't think that the Barbie trailers did that. I think that the whole, like, the part of the movie that actually seems to like be like part of the bigger message, which is the whole like Kens and patriarchy thing, that was basically not mentioned at all, except for the gag where Ken is like, just let me do one small appendectomy, and it's like, oh, why is Ken acting like that? But okay. But so I think that they did a good job of like hiding that from audiences.
I will mention, I think it was interesting to have like a satirical, I guess, dichotomy between the real world and the Barbie world, because that was another thing I was afraid of, because I'm glad that like Greta understood that you don't need to have a realistic real world if you're trying to like tell a profound message or trying to make a point about the real world. Sometimes it's not only more digestible, but it makes your point even stronger if you take references from things in the real world and just accentuate upon them without going overboard. I thought that was great, because right when Barbie and Ken go in, it's like, okay, they're instantly, like, she's instantly getting catcalled, and then he's being respected, like, every which way, which I thought was interesting, because we're kind of seeing it from their perspective. Like, we're seeing it from a man's perspective, like, a glimpse type of, like, what a man's life might be like versus, like, a woman's life, what their life might be like. But, like, obviously a large majority of people don't experience literally every single person, you know, having this happen to them, or, like, going up the escalator and then just instantly being like, yeah, my boys on the dollar bills. And then Bill Clinton and Ronald Reagan.
Sylvester Stallone in
My
fur
two
coats.
So it's just, yeah, Rocky. So I think it was fun to see that the Barbie world was kind of being, their perspective coming from that was kind of being brought from that. It also adds a kid element, because it's easier for kids to understand that too, and to just see, like, you can kind of pick up on the point fairly quickly. But yeah, that was just something I noticed. But I will say, like, a detractor for me was, like, maybe this might be a trailer syndrome, but I just feel like I saw most of what happened to them in the real world interacting with other people in the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
When they're rollerblading and, like, first get there is kind of like the most experience we get with them. It's not like I was demanding more experience with them being in the real world or anything, or, like, experiencing other things, because obviously it's not like the main plot is them being there. It's like, you know, the other things I mentioned earlier. But I just think it was, maybe it's, I don't know. I feel like it's a common thing in films, like when they're trying to show, like, a brand new world experience thing, and they spend like 5 minutes kind of showing this is how things are, and then you kind of go on to the next thing. I feel like that's just a part of the pacing issue that I had. Also, it's kind of, everything has to be at breakneck speed, and, like, we have to digest all of these things very quickly, or else, you know, we're going to lose, like, the central plot and Mattel and everything. So
Yeah. That might have also been a practical concern, because I know a lot of the time studios now try to avoid shooting stuff just on the street if they can, because they know with everybody having cell phones and being kind of attracted to filming, especially in California, it's going to leak. So that might have been one of the reasons they also featured that pretty heavily in the trailers too, because I think before they'd released a poster, before they'd released trailers, before they'd released anything, I had seen just bystander, like, cell phone images of Barbie and Ken roller skating and punching that guy, and I think they knew inevitably those, like, on the street moments, no matter how they blocked off the sidewalk, people were going to find a way to get some shots of that in such a public
California.
Yeah. I think another contributing factor to the sort of pace and constancy of things is the massive cast. And I already rattled off many of the names at the beginning, but I thought maybe we could dig into these performances a little bit more. Was Margot Robbie good? Was Ryan Gosling good? Or was anyone else especially good or bad? What do you think?
So I thought everybody was pretty good all around. I even Simu Liu, who I didn't really like in Shang-Chi, which was kind of his big, like, star vehicle before this. I thought he was really funny, and I thought he and Ryan Gosling had an amusing rivalry on screen that they both played pretty well. Potentially off screen as well. Maybe that's just being played up for the cameras. I don't know. But in terms of kind of smaller roles, going into it, I was ready to be very impressed by Ncuti Gatwa, who is also in Sex Ed, but he's going to be the new Doctor on Doctor Who. So I'm very much in tune with finding out. I mean, I love him on Sex Ed, but I was interested to see a different performance from him. He's mostly a background character in this, honestly. He doesn't have a ton to do. I think it's Adam from Sex Ed, though, who is the like the man with no power in Mattel.
Aaron Dinkins.
I didn't even know he was going to be in it, and I thought he was really funny for the few lines that he had. Like when Barbie storms into the office and asks to see a woman, and they're all like, "Well, I'm in charge. I'm in charge. I'm in charge." Well, I'm a man without any power. Does that make me a woman? So yeah, I mean, cast is great all around. I did not find myself let down by anybody in particular. Like I said in my opening thoughts, I was worried about Will Ferrell, but I actually found him quite funny throughout. And I think if he had not been funny, those boardroom scenes I think would have been unbearable. But I thought his material was great in that. The one kind of awkward bit where he's trying to figure out when they last had a female CEO was probably one of the hardest times I laughed in the movie, honestly. Yeah, great cast.
Yeah, I agree. I think obviously Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling are like the featured roles who I would say definitely had like the most to do, and they both did really well, with like Margot Robbie definitely being the more grounded one, and Ryan Gosling just, you know, living in his Ken kingdom or whatever. Forget what the full name of it was, but
His Mojo Dojo Casa house.
Well, okay, that, but like, you know, his Kenergy, so therefore I went with the
Yes,
Kendom,
the
Kendom, yeah.
country, yeah, that whole thing. Yeah, so I think in terms of performances, like Ryan Gosling definitely had the most, like, I don't know, aura around what he did to like get into the role, and in terms of like press, he was very much still in the role. Where there was just a bunch of nonsense pouring out of his mouth at all times, which is kind of what he did in the movie. Yeah, I thought Ryan Gosling was very funny in the movie. And I also really liked Kingsley Benadir, who plays like his kind of like Ken sidekick, who is like obviously like kind of in love with him, just a little bit, probably. But at least very much like they're besties, or like, you know, he's his bestie. I do think this is a bit off topic. Okay, never mind. I'll talk about that later.
Okay.
Anyways.
Okay.
Something to look forward to.
Wow. I'll say that I get tired of Michael Cera. Or I'm gonna say a lot of crazy stuff.
Wow. Oh no.
No. Look, I didn't. Okay, can I finish my sentence? Okay.
All Ken's clothes fit him.
When I was talking about everyone stop looking at me like this. Okay. When we did not need the Alan beating up the construction workers building the wall, okay? We did not need that scene.
We did need it.
No.
But
I will say, Amelia, watch out. Okay. Look, Ariana Greenblatt, right? I thought she did good. I thought she was really funny.
Oh yeah.
By the way, when I say things are funny, even if I didn't laugh, sometimes I exhale through my nose very loudly, and that's when she called Margot a fascist. That was pretty good.
Right.
And, I liked her. It was good, applicable, contrasting teenage angst, especially when it comes to America Ferrera. And I thought she was a pretty believable mom. I won't go as far as to say it was an emotional experience for me, like Christian was saying in his review. But I will say that I thought that she felt more necessary than I would have assumed when I first introduced her. And that's not just because she ended up being the one that was actually playing with Barbie, obviously, but I think that having the human presence in the Barbie world towards the end added a good contrast, so it's not just like the Kens versus the Barbies type thing. I'm not like a massive fan of Will Ferrell, to be honest. Like, I was pretty much neutral with him the whole time. I mean, I kind of knew what to expect. I guess there was a few good zingers in there, but like, I don't know. I just get tired of like seeing him. I just feel like he's a lot more limited than people assume in his acting capability. I just see like Elf and Brief Manager at the Office and the business guy from freaking Lego Movie and shit. So, and I'll also say Kate McKinnon. I don't like her. I don't enjoy her very much. I don't like her on SNL. I get tired of her personality, but I think she did good here. I really liked her, honestly. Even though she was fulfilling a role of like, oh, it's like King Arthur and the Wizard. It's like an obvious, you know, she's the one in the tower. You gotta go to have all the guidance. But I thought she was very reserved, surprisingly, because I feel like she can really go crazy and go all over the place. But for a character that was like a Barbie that was messed with, I thought that she was definitely reserved, and her usual like visual quirks and like the smile thing that she does like this all the time. But they only used that gag twice, and I thought, you know, even it's a really silly thing, I just thought that she was a good like mixture of being important and being comedic relief in this case. And I was surprised at how much like screen time she got, and how you know, like I felt like she was important to the plot. So those are the ones that stuck out to me that we didn't already mention. I'll say, like, oh my gosh, I'm not a huge fan of Ryan Gosling. Okay.
Wow.
Sorry.
Statements.
Yeah.
I know. This is like, yeah. I mean, but I thought that he didn't feel like comedic relief, and him having his own arc, like Christian mentioned earlier, and an arc that was slightly different, I think was very surprising to me also. And I think that I liked... I didn't necessarily like the fact that Barbie kind of just had to explain to him directly what he needed to do, and he was still crying, and he was stagnating a little bit towards the end, but otherwise a lot of his individual moments and a lot of the subplots and the gags revolved around him, and I thought that was very, you know, well-paced in that regard. And then, yeah, Margot Robbie, I think she did great. I liked her in this better since we had just watched Babylon not too long ago. I think this was a more appropriate role for her, and I think it's, first of all, they say it in the movie, which I'll say that was an eye-rolling moment. I was like, yes, I understand. It's Margot Robbie. You don't have to tell me it's Margot Robbie. I get that's a meta joke, but it's that funny. But I think, yeah, it's ironic that it's Margot Robbie playing her, and yeah. I think it was a really great casting choice, and her little moments when she's talking about, like, she's having, like, random, like, vocab spills and, like, just saying things very intricately are interesting, like, nods to the fact that her character is going to eventually progress and that she will eventually become human in her own way. So I just, you know, I thought that was good and surprising. So a lot of surprising things. Like, none of this cast is like, wow, I can't believe they did such a great job. I was just like... For the most part, it was a lot of breaching of expectations, I think. I hate to say it, but I think Michael Cera was, like, having that one scene really bothered me for some reason. I swear to God, I just see Michael Cera everywhere, okay? Like, oh, well, I guess I'm just going to stand here. Like, how many characters have you played that do the same thing?
So,
gosh.
Based on, I've seen some tweets from people who saw a test screening of this, and it does sound like they put more Alan in the movie. Like, it sounds like a lot of the cutaways to him were added.
So funny.
So
that's crazy.
That didn't stand out to me, but I could potentially see some of those being a little awkward. I did want to jump in and say I would be remiss not to mention Rob Brydon as Sugar Daddy Ken. I think I was the only person in the theater who recognized Rob Brydon, but he's an English comedian. He hosts the show Would I Lie to You, which is my go-to. I'm at work and there's nothing going on. It's a slow shift. I'm going to watch Would I Lie to You on my phone. He's hilarious, and so when he showed up for a shot, I went, Rob! It was great to see him, because he was at the premiere, but he didn't like get his own pink carpet photo, so he was just like in the background of other people's photos. And is that Rob Brydon? Why is Rob Brydon at the Barbie premiere? Well, I know now. I know why he was at the Barbie premiere.
I fully understand, Mitchell, your frustration with the Alan fight scene. That felt like Alan. A bit much. That was literally just like a Scott Pilgrim scene, like down to like it being like a comic book fight. But I will say, I think Michael Cera is a little bit forgiven for his sort of like his brand of stardom. To me sprouts from a similar place from where a lot of like high school theater kids' fascination with Zach Garrigus came from.
Wait a minute. What is I have to stop
Where are we
disassembling this
going
pen and
now?
pay attention.
Just know the plan will land. I've got a plan.
Okay.
They're similar in the sense that they're just these like, you know, good-natured like gangly guys that are just like existing and like mostly comfortable with themselves, and then everyone around them is just like, oh my god, these guys are just so everything all at once, and the guys in question are just like, oh yeah, I'm just being me, you know. So that brand of charisma. Congrats, Zach. I guess that's a backhanded compliment.
I don't know if
Yeah,
I can
definitely.
speak to that really, because I was just me. So
Exactly.
That's what
exactly
Michael Cera would say.
said.
Yes.
Thank you. Point made. So I like Michael Cera most of the time, except for some of the excesses. I like Ryan Gosling a lot in this movie. He was making me laugh basically nonstop in the first hour, and I'm not a big laugher, even in the theater most of the time. But I was, man, he had me going. And I'll echo what Zach said about Simu. I did not like him at all in Shang-Chi, but I thought he was great here. Emma Mackey, I really liked.
Mhm.
I don't watch Sex Ed. The only thing I've seen her in other than this is Death on the Nile,
she was
which
in
is
Death on the
very
Nile.
different.
Okay.
But
She was hot in that too.
yeah, I think she sort of unfairly is cited as like woman in Hollywood that sort of looks like Margot Robbie all of the time. And they even said, I think she or Margot said in one of the interviews that they were going to do a gag about that. But then
Yeah.
once the hair colors were different, they didn't look all that much alike anyway. I just think she does probably the best job of portraying the transition between like liberated Barbie to like serving Kendom Barbie and then back. I think she probably does the best with that. Who else am I missing? America Ferrera, I thought she was fine. I mean, her character was in a very obvious way not for me, and I understand that, and I think she delivers that monologue, which is, I think, both literally and in the way she delivers it, preachy, but like it's meant to be. Like I don't think there's any other way to deliver something as impassioned and emotional as that, and I think it was completely appropriate within its context. So before I get soundbited into saying the speech about women is wrong,
You just
say,
said it.
yeah.
Where's Kevin with the iPhone?
I'm gonna be clipped on TikTok. Oh no.
Yeah.
And Will Ferrell, I like Will Ferrell fine, and I think he does a good job in some of his dramatic films that no one watches, but he has two, Everything Must Go and Stranger Than Fiction, where he's not playing this idiot comic character all the time, and I think he does a really good job in both of those. But I think it was a little distracting, just a little bit, that he's playing the CEO of Mattel here, and then he's also President Business in Lego Movie. I guess it's a little different
President
because
Business.
in that movie he's both the villain in the Lego universe and like the human father in the human verse, so it's not exactly the same thing here, but there was still just the obvious thematic connection to like Toy World and Real World. To me that was maybe vaguely too similar, but I do think his approach to the comedy here is different enough that it works. And yeah, I liked him. Ariana Greenblatt was really good, and my mom recognized her because she plays the daughter in 65, the dinosaur movie with Adam Driver. So
Okay,
fun
well,
fact there.
she's also young Gamora in
Oh yeah.
No way.
Avengers Infinity War. So
Oh wow.
yeah,
that's
she's
crazy.
in $2 billion movies.
I didn't recognize her from that, but I do remember seeing a post about that.
Good for her.
And Boss Baby Family Business.
Oh,
Which
yeah.
Boss Baby movie was that?
I don't know, but she was Tabitha Templeton.
Well, that fills in a lot. Thank you, Mitchell.
Directed by Tom McGrath, director of Megamind, starring Will Ferrell.
Oh no.
Okay.
It's crazy, all
Anyway.
the connections.
Anyway.
Anyway,
Next question.
Yeah, okay. The last thing I'll say about the cast is that I enjoyed that the characters were motivated by actual Mattel products. Like Alan was a toy that was made. Midge is a toy that was made. Skipper is a toy that my mom had apparently as a kid, which is crazy. So I thought that was fun and a good way to sort of let the choices that you're confronted with inform you and to not just over insert your own genre preferences. I think we're winding down here. I feel like, at least from my perspective, I don't think it would be productive to talk too much at length about the plot specifics here, because I think we've discussed them thematically already. But yeah, any closing thoughts you guys have about the actors or the film at large, or even the sort of cultural moment that Barbie and Barbenheimer has made for going to the movies?
I guess to get a little more into the way that I liked how they addressed the dynamic with Ken and Barbie. During the trailers, I will agree, Amelia, that I don't think the trailers really gave away that Ken was kind of the villain of the movie. To the extent that there was a trailer breakdown TikTok that my girlfriend showed me about a week before we saw the movie. That was like, look, they're going into Kendom, so Ken might be the villain. And I kind of went, oh no, because I was worried that they were going to do this really uncreative, not especially interesting, like, incel angle with Ken, where Barbie won't go out with me, and so he becomes like the dictator of Barbie Land. And I thought that would be so boring. And they kind of did that. But like I mentioned at the beginning, they did it in a way that made it really funny and kind of more interesting than I expected. Because Ken does sort of become an incel, but he becomes an incel in this really innocent way where he just kind of thinks that, like, dudes are cool. And he remains, like, so innocent throughout that he remains funny and likable. And at least for me, you kind of want him to, like, realize himself, despite kind of the awful things that he's done and intends to continue doing, at least at some point. And I think that helps to make a pretty valid point, not just for women, but for young men as well, which applies to the real world as well, where I think a lot of young men do have this impression that their value and identity is based in the fact that they need to date an attractive woman, or they need to have sex with an attractive woman, and that's where their identity comes from. And I think the movie did a good job of addressing that as something that's as harmful in a way to men as it is to women, because it puts them on this destructive path, on this self-destructive path, which also hurts other people. And that doesn't benefit them. It doesn't benefit women. It doesn't benefit anybody. So I thought the movie did a really good job of intelligently addressing that kind of deep and touchy conflict in a way that was still funny throughout.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have final thoughts?
Yeah.
Come on, Amelia, you're next.
No, I think you should go. I think you should go first because I kind of have a lot. So.
Okay. Okay. You are a woman too, so you should have the last word.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. Zach is offended. I pointed out gender differences. Okay. Don't say anything, okay. Zach. You're gonna cut it out if you say anything. Okay. I was gonna say. It's interesting that I've read reviews that, especially from women on Letterboxd, that were very, very critical of the movie, and one of the biggest criticisms that I was finding most frequently was it was that it's hard to address like something like a complex system as the patriarchy, for example, and have kind of having an assumption that like incels or people that could be relevant to the real world, like similar to Ken, or don't act with malicious intent, and that it purely is ignorance. And I can definitely see that perspective, that I guess when you're pursuing this, I guess what really is lost is kind of the serious malicious element, that there actually is men actively trying to put down women, or knowingly, like they're intelligent men that are knowingly doing this in positions of power. And then like Ken doesn't really have like an actual position of power. It's kind of like a fake one. So there's a lot of different ways you could go about that, but I do think that is an opinion worth acknowledging. But I will have to agree with Zach that it's not really because of the film's modesty and addressing the topics without taking a very, very firm, this is what you should do as a woman, or this is what you should do as a man stance, I think is kind of to its benefit. I think kind of just knowing the audience is a little bit smarter and can come down to their own have their own opinions and come to their own conclusions is good. Especially because I think the film could have gone into a very telly thing where it's like, this is what you should do, or this is like, this is what feminism really is, and it doesn't really go that route, and that's another one of the smart things, I thought. Even if it was like mostly delivered in 3 monologues, I think it addresses the topics very fairly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, in anticipation of Amelia's last word, I guess I should jump in now. I will say, I think most of the time, a film is more than just a film. And in this case, the timing and the marketing of this has elevated it into something more. And I'm the type of, despite, having this film podcast with friends and logging an obscene amount of things on Letterboxd and what have you, and trying to extend into the more academic corners of cinema, I'm still at the end of the day very much a blockbuster-oriented person, and I am very fond of the idea of a film that can appeal to everybody in some way or another, and I think this one does that. But something I got from talking to my mom about the film that I never would have gotten on my own is this idea of Ken's sort of incel inadequacy angle or whatever. It's not a mere stand-in for men, but my mom told me that the Ken doll, to at least when she was a kid, was I think these were her exact words, totally superfluous to Barbie, and like she couldn't even remember if she had a Ken, and the whole like he's just Ken thing to her is like a accurate reflection of that product. Like he's always just kind of there, but he doesn't serve much of a purpose beyond that. And another thing she mentioned is that her sister had a weird Barbie where she like cut the hair on her Barbie doll and like played really hard with it or whatever. And maybe these are just weird coincidences, but I think these things, the familiarity that people like my mom have with these concepts, and then even hearing that secondhand from my mom enhances those choices a lot to me. And I think it's a version of appealing to nostalgia that isn't quite nostalgia bait, but the familiarity of it deepens the thematic choices here. And I mean, in retrospect, it feels really obvious that they did this, but I did appreciate that the conclusion of the movie was not returning to Barbie Land, but was creating something better, where we're at least like striving for a level of equality. And I'm sure they could have gotten away with dunking on the Kens, and it would have been thematically fine too. But I like what they ended up doing. So 4.5 stars, and a lot of that comes from where this lands in the sort of cultural timing of it, and marketing and everything. I really enjoyed seeing how many people got something out of it.
I think they did kind of dunk on the Kens a little bit. Maybe not wholesale,
sure,
but at the end they are still in this position where they're like, well, we can give you like a low-level regional judge somewhere.
Right. And that's, of course, the reference to the real world.
Which I think is meant to have you like, well, that's not fair as like a guy. And so you're kind of in that position of being like, oh, I get it. Like at least a little bit. Of course, the film can't fully break down the patriarchy, but I did find that effective at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'll start with just a reference to the weird Barbie thing. That is definitely like a universal concept. I personally did not have a weird Barbie because I was always very careful and loving with my toys, but I think I was weird for doing that and for not having a weird Barbie, but yeah, that's definitely like universal concept. Okay, I have a little like notes thing. So first of all, Barbie equals Frodo. I saw that online and I agree, which is the whole thing where like she goes on this journey and she's so changed by it that she can't go back and live in the world that she started in. Frodo gets to go to heaven. She gets to go to the real world, which is like hell, but so it's a little bit opposite there, but okay. I'm trying to... Oh, one other just, like, small thing. I think it's so interesting that all of you are like, yeah, the Chevy, like, car chase commercial sequence was distracting. It's like, as a woman, which maybe I shouldn't start it with that. As a person who doesn't care about cars, like, at all, it was not distracting to me because I, like, didn't even clock that it was, like, all... Chevys.
Oh no, did we prove the film's point?
So I think it would be really interesting to like go around and ask, you know, like women versus men, like who was bothered by that, because I was like, it's a car chase.
Why aren't there any real horses in this movie?
Yeah. Okay, so that's, and then okay, now going into kind of more the big concepts. I've heard people online calling the Barbie movie, not in a bad way, but just like is what it is, Feminism 101, which I agree. And so I think a lot of the criticisms of it want it to be like Feminism 401. And I agree that, or my take on it, I would say, is that I don't think Barbie as a doll, as a concept, is capable of taking on Feminism 401. So the fact that it does Feminism 101, and I think everybody would agree that it does Feminism 101 well, is like an important part of the experience of the movie, because like I said, like the first time that I saw it, I was a little disappointed. And I think that's because I was expecting something a bit more than what it ever promised or was capable of. And so when I reeled in my expectations to just Feminism 101, I like enjoyed it a lot more because it does do that really well. And I think there's a lot to say that like Barbie, you know, Barbie is so big. There's so many things attached to Barbie that they can't even possibly like get to all of that in the movie. So it's like, because Barbie is so big, like the movie isn't really going to have the capability of being like subtle or like sly about certain things, because obviously like it is like subtle in some ways, but for like the big topics, you know, I think it's better that Greta just like took it on head first instead of like kind of trying to like slide around some of the things. Which leads me into the monologues, where what I'm going to say is Greta is the queen of monologues. She writes the queen of feminist monologues. I don't know about monologues as a whole, but she writes a good feminist monologue, because genuinely, like, my favorite monologues of all time are Amy's monologue from Little Women and Joe's monologue from Little Women. So the monologues in this movie, I think, are well written and well acted, and I think, yeah, it is like more to do with the fact that they do like come so fast after each other, because I think in her other movies her monologues are a little bit more spread out and they feel like they belong a little bit more where they are, whereas in this movie I can see how it can get like a little tiring because they are like so close together. But I think that just on their own they're good, and they get like straight to the point of how a lot of women like feel, especially obviously America Ferrera's monologue. And I did think it was like interesting that like that is what deprogrammed the like brainwashed Barbies, Like, I wasn't quite sure how they were going to get around all of that, like rescue them. I think that's how they phrase it in the movie. But I did like that it's like kind of like Barbie couldn't be brainwashed because she had experienced what it was like to be a woman in the real world. So giving the Barbies like a little dose of that is kind of what's going to help them wake up. I think makes a lot of sense. And then, okay, tackling the big thing, which is Ken and the patriarchy and all of the stuff that goes down with that. I think as a whole, there was a lot of like people, or I would say like the Barbies, like ignoring the Barbies and the Kens, ignoring like the other Barbies and Kens in the world who like offer support for them. So like Barbie, she's never mean to Ken. She doesn't like do anything to Ken, but she does like not really care about him. And obviously Ken takes that horribly. But Ken has his best friend who is obviously like dotes on him, supports him completely, does all that. And throughout the movie we see that like Ken doesn't really pay attention to him at all or give him any kind of support in return. Alan is completely ignored and decides that he just wants to leave. Weird Barbie is called Weird Barbie to her face and still like supports the Barbies when they need her help. So I think the movie intentionally or unintentionally shows a lot of different reactions to the situation that Ken is in. And Ken's whole arc, I don't really have an issue with it. Like, it's done very well. It's just people's like discussion of it. I've talked to Christian about this a little bit and I got a little mad at him, but it's fine.
Oh no.
You know this. Christian and I sometimes get into conflict about movies. It's fine. Where, you know, we were talking about this and it's like, I think the issue with like talking about, you know, like Barbie ignoring Ken and that's why he did all this is that the way that a lot of kind of, I'm going to say men, not that you're all saying this, whatever, the way that, but the way that a lot of men have said it feels like it's a justification for what Ken does as opposed to an explanation. And I don't like that because I don't think anything that Barbie could have done to Ken or that anybody can do to anybody justifies like destroying their whole world and forcing them into like a serving role where they like can't be a real person anymore, like taking their house, taking their livelihood. Like, I don't think anything justifies that, even if the Barbies had like completely done that to the Kens, which I don't think they did. I think the Kens like came back and like took everything to like a whole other level because obviously the Barbies, like, we don't know where the Kens lived. That's pointed out. That's like messed up or whatever. But the Kens didn't like have to serve the Barbies. They just kind of chose to always be there. So that's like my issue with it, is that it's hard to talk about the explanation for why Ken does all that without making it sound like it's a justification. And it's obvious, I would hope, obviously not a justification. And I think very realistic in that like literally all women have to do is ignore men and then they will like come back at us like times 10. Whereas like in the opposite way, like men can do like all kinds of shit and still Barbie is like, I don't want to hurt him. And I'm really glad that they had America Ferrera be like, he literally destroyed your entire world and you're worried about hurting him emotionally.
Yeah.
And then Barbie's like, oh, right. So I loved that part. And then the end, which I've seen a ton of people talk about this, where Barbie apologizes to Ken and Ken never apologizes to Barbie. I'm not quite sure why they wrote it like that. I don't know why they left out Ken apologizing to Barbie. I don't know if they did that as like that's just a more realistic way of things, which is sad to me, or if it just genuinely like slipped their mind, or they thought that like Ken had enough of a like change that he didn't need to apologize, like it was clear that he wasn't going to do that again or what. But I think that if anything, like that's the biggest thing that I would change about the movie is like after Barbie can apologize, like she did ignore him and that's not nice, so like I wouldn't take that out necessarily, but I would definitely after Barbie teaches Ken how to be like a good person again, I would definitely have him be like, oh, and by the way, like I'm sorry for destroying your life.
Yeah.
So those are all my thoughts.
Yeah.
Cool.
I
That
think
seems
that's
like
a
a
fair
good
summary
ending.
of the conflicts of the film. Yeah. You mentioned the monologues by Greta Gerwig, which we kind of mentioned earlier as well, but it reminded me. I would be intrigued to hear what what Noah Baumbach brought to the script.
Me too.
Because it does feel very Greta Gerwig, and I have to wonder. I feel like Noah Baumbach is to the indie boys as Greta Gerwig kind of is to the indie gals. I mean, that's a simplification of the point, but I think they're two very similar filmmakers, purely separated, I think, just by gender. So I would be interested to see what he kind of brought to this. I mean, very early in the announcement of them writing it together, I joked that, oh, Ken's going to be like an out-of-work screenwriter who takes it out on Barbie or something like that. But there wasn't really any of that kind of like aggressive, I'm so in line with my work, Barbie type stuff that you would expect based on previous Noah Baumbach films. So yeah, maybe we'll find that out in the behind-the-scenes featurette on the Barbie Blu-ray,
Which I will be buying.
That'll probably have a pink
Wow.
case. I bet they'll do that.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
hope so.
Oh
That'd
my
be
god,
great.
a pink, shiny
Glittery.
sparkles.
Yeah.
I have to get the steelbook. We'll see.
Mhm.
Okay. Should I run away now?
Sure, yeah, I
Yeah.
guess we can.
Just make sure to do it in reverse to go back.
Right. Back to Barbie Land. Okay. Time for the rundown.
Run down, I explain. We run Christian down with a Barbie car. And he has to explain what stuff from the movie is with number ratings out of 5. And
Wow,
that's
that was
it.
good.
But now Amelia has to do it too. So he's
Ooh.
getting the triple threat once again.
And what order will that triple
Yes,
threat be
that's a
in?
good question.
Just so I'm prepared.
Zach can go first,
Okay.
then Amelia, then me.
Okay.
Okay.
Are we all ready then?
Spaghetti.
Okay. The rundown shall begin in 3, 2, 1, go. Mojo Dosho Casa Houses.
4 out of 5.
Dual sunglasses.
3 out of 5.
Musical numbers.
3 out of 5.
Pink.
3 out of 5.
Simu Liu.
3 out of 5.
The box.
3 out of 5.
Flat Feet.
2 out of 5.
Horses.
3 out of 5.
Every night is girls' night.
2 out of 5.
Jeeps.
2 out of 5.
Occupation beach.
3 out of 5.
Malibu.
2 out of 5.
Allen.
4 out of 5.
All Ken's clothes fit him.
4 out of 5.
In sync.
3 out of 5.
Blaming Mattel.
3 out of 5.
Asking your mother.
4 out of 5.
Having all the genitals.
3 out of 5.
Lizzo.
2 out of 5.
Ryan Gosling's abs.
3 out of 5.
Aqua.
3 out of 5.
You Are Kenuff.
4 out of 5.
There we go.
Oh,
Good
Wow.
heartbreaker.
So when I wrote Ryan Gosling abs on the list to send to Mitchell, when I read it back, I read it as Ryan Gosling anti-lock braking system, and I had a good laugh about that.
Bang! bong. That's so funny.
They got to put that in the sequel, which they shouldn't make.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Should they?
Well, thank you, Amelia, for joining us again.
Thank you.
It's been great to have you. Is there anything
Thank
you want to
you.
plug or any I don't know, maybe your Letterboxd handle or anything you want to shout out?
Your TikTok.
Oh god, not my TikTok. I'm purely a lurker.
Wow.
I don't know. I am on Letterboxd. You can find me. I'm friends with all of these men. So
These pieces of trash.
All right, and I'll include a link to that down in the description below for the YouTube version, at least, if that's okay with you, Amelia.
sure, yeah.
All
Okay.
right. It's in
Down
the bio.
box.
It's in the description.
In the box below.
So who's previewing next?
It'll be Mitchell. Mitchell, what are we talking about next time?
I don't know. Is it the spiritual successor? Am I
Yes.
correct?
Yeah.
Spiritual adjacent. I don't know what successor is.
It means that it
Many
would come
words.
afterward.
Well, I'm glad I had many days to recover from having my face blown off in IMAX because Cillian Murphy is in my dreams and my nightmares now because we're talking about Oppenheimer. It's like the most obvious next episode probably of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, and I did read the book. It's 900 pages, so
Oh,
be prepared because I know everything.
that
about
went right on my reading
about
list.
this
so
movie.
I'll be intrigued to discuss the book as well.
Yeah. Awesome.
Awesome. Can't wait. This has been Cookie Pocket. This has been Barbie. You know,
Yay.
it's been fun. Thanks again, Amelia, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.